welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm Cyrus Webb here at the Pearl Public Library in Pearl, Mississippi with a very special guest that's joining us today. Robert Leon Davis is the author of the book Running Scared. He's making his first appearance here in Pearl, Mississippi to discuss the book, what it's been like for him to be able to share his story, and what he hopes you're able to know about his own journey and how he was able to surrender. Robert, hello to you and welcome to the program.
How you doing?
Man, so good to finally meet you. You know, I should let our audience know you and I actually were introduced to each other 6 years ago.
6 years ago.
You were on the radio show Conversations Live then. I knew when I read the book then that it was powerful, and now 6 years later the book continues to be able to spread. What has that been like for you to see the way that people responded to it?
Well, I don't know, since the last 6 years, a whole lot has been going on. It's sort of surreal in a way, because the book is a tell-all, as we talked about, about my story, and it's kind of a raw story,
right.
And it's just now picking up a lot of international attention now. Basically, it's being translated now into different languages and so forth, but it's been received well. I mean, it's been received well, considering what I had done.
Right.
Yeah.
And I should say, for those who don't know the backstory about Robert, you were a police officer.
Right.
You made some decisions that weren't the best.
Bad decisions.
Yeah,
right.
that led you to be on the run for over 20 years.
22 years.
And the thing about your story is people will focus on the dramatic aspect of it, but there was a big spiritual aspect to what happened to you as well. Did you imagine when you wrote the book that would be such a big part of it?
Not really. I mean, well, I don't know. In a way, I guess you can say yes, because I was told when I got released by the court system and went through everything I had to go through, the judge told me I should write a book based on my story, and I began to write it. And I don't know, maybe about 2 years later, when I longhand wrote the book, someone told me, "Are you sure you want to put your trash out there like that?" And I remember putting the book in a book sack and putting it in the closet, and it stayed there for like 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, I thought about it, and I said, I saw a commercial, and jokingly I tell people it's a Nike commercial, and it just said, "Just do it."
Yeah.
So I took the book out and had it published, and like I said, it's been well received. But the good thing about it is that for one thing, it was therapy for me, and more than anything, what a lot of people may not understand is when you have already revealed your closet.
Mm-hmm.
I have a certain degree of, you might say, I have a certain advantage over a lot of people because I've already released what's in my closet.
Right.
So there's not a question someone could ask me that I'm not willing to ask, or willing to share with them. But of course, if you got something to hide, well, that's the kind of life you live. So I've been blessed in the fact that my closet is pretty clean now.
Right. I mentioned the surrender aspect of your story, and we'll get to that in a minute. I want to talk to you about empathy, because one thing I have experienced is that when you've gone through something, it makes you more empathetic toward other people versus looking at someone and say, how could they do X, Y, or Z?
Right.
Have you found that to be the case, that because of what you've been through, it makes you more empathetic to other people?
Yeah, I'm not, one of the things that that has caused me in my life is, anytime I hear, it can be from a family event, I come from a large family, it could be my siblings saying something about one of the other siblings, or it could be a friend talking about another friend. I'm not too judgmental about it. As I tell people all the time, I'm not qualified for that, because of, I've been forgiven. And I've always said, one of the excerpts in my book is, if you should practice to forgive in order that you may be forgiven. That would be an injustice. How can you expect to be forgiven for something you've done if you're not ready to forgive yourself?
Right.
So, it gives you some empathy, and maybe some people might even get mad at you, because it's like somebody go out even to kill someone, and you say, like I remember a story like when Saddam Hussein died.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we know he was a bad guy. We know that he killed many people, but I still wasn't like clapping when the word came that he was killed.
Right.
I was glad that he was out the way, but I wasn't happy that a human being died.
Sure.
And so, it makes you have empathy for You know, whether somebody on the small stage or somebody on the large scale.
You mentioned the cleaning of your closet, and you were able to do what happened to you before there was social media, before the internet was as big as it is today. Now, as you said, the people are finding out about your story is being shared, as you mentioned the translations. How do you think the internet has changed the way that people are finding out about you and what you've been able to go through?
Well, mainly because you got a lot of press now. You got to remember when I went on the run in 1979, there was no computers also. And so when I came back, 22 years later, the internet was just getting off the ground pretty good, you know, in the early 2000s. It's changed. If it has still been no internet, this story might not even be out there. But because of the internet, because of Instagram and all these other media outlets, it's gotten out there because people now have, especially younger people, they have an interest now where they say, let me look at books on fugitives. Let me look at books on repentance or transformation or whatever, you know. And you know, they're able to access that through the internet. Someone sent me an email the other day, a producer, which I mean I wasn't particularly proud of, but it's just funny how people gravitate towards the media, like something like the 10 most, what was it, the 10 most unbelievable fugitives in the world, and they got me sitting up there. It's like when I'm dying, when I'm dead, that'll still be on there.
Right.
And not because I'm saying the fact that it's something for me to be proud of, but I'm saying that the internet now has gotten to the point right now where once you do something, whether it's good or whether it's bad, it's on there.
Yeah.
And people can now access this. You don't have to actually go to a physical library and research anything and look at tape. You can actually just on your phone pull up anything.
Yeah. And I think that's so true. And one of the aspects of what and you and I discussed this actually in the ride to Rankin County today, that a lot of times people will gravitate toward the more sensational aspect of your story. The big thing for me though is the surrender, and not so much surrendering to law enforcement that's in the book, but the surrendering of yourself to God. Talk to us about faith and how what you went through actually helped you when it comes to your faith.
Yeah, it's all, that's what it's all about. I mean, you know, I've had, like I mentioned to you, I've had a couple of people over I don't know what, my book was published like 08 or somewhere like that, so it's almost been published for 10 years. I've had a couple of people in the film industry that came to me and want to do some filming on it and so forth, documentaries. But I've always refused them because they always want to deal with the exciting part of it. You know, how to build a fire, how did you eat animals, how did you live here, what did you do when you go to this city? That's fine and dandy, I get it. You know, it's about money with Hollywood, but the spiritual component is the part that made me surrender. And as you can see from the subtitle of my book, it's surrendering to God first, then to law enforcement. And you know, I'm a former atheist. That's another biggie in there, is because I had given up on God when I got on the run, because of course, how can there be a God if you got my life this way?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If I can't call family, if I can't be with family, if I'm not having any friends, and I got to, everywhere I go at, I'm going to be alone and by myself. How could there possibly be a God? And I tell many people in my maybe in my 5th year, I got used to being like an animal for its spirituality. That was out the door. And maybe my 10th year, I was totally mentally out of it. I mean, I would probably be more kinder to an animal than a human. By the time I reached my 15th year out there, and after that, subsequently after that, things began to change for me. I think I was always looking for a way to surrender, but I never found a way. The only way I thought about surrendering was to put a bullet in my head. And, you know, because that's the easy way out, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But when I was out in the woods of Tennessee, there was some odd things or remarkable or spiritual things that occurred to me that I talked about in the book. I can't, to go into it now because it's too lengthy. But there were some things that God did with me personally that made me feel like I needed to turn myself in. And I could not understand a God entering my life that would have me surrender, and which is surrender to death, rather than surrender to life, because you gotta understand, I was still looking at 30 years in prison, you know, and by this time, I'm 46 years old. I mean, I went on the run like in my 20s. So when you're 46 years old and you're surrendering now to the police department, if you're looking at a 30-year sentence, that's essentially life. You're not getting down to 76 years old. So the spiritual component is the part of it. What would make a man that has gotten accustomed and used to being on his own for 22 years, what would make him, what does it take for God to come and enter into that soulless and hard heart? And I can't really explain it to you in the sense of saying it's ABC, but it's just a combination of things. I think God knows not that I think, I know, He knows what it takes for each individual before He can pull them. And for me, it took a drastic thing to happen.
Right.
For you, it may not be so much. For the next person, it may not be so much. But for me, with that kind of type A personality I got, yeah, I always tell people all the time, I'm the kind of guy that everybody can come running from around the corner and saying there's a tiger around there, and I'm the food that's gonna go around there and peek. And that's what He knew about me. So you know what? I'm gonna let Him make these bad decisions, because He didn't do this to me. Okay, and we gotta understand that He didn't do this to me. I made a decision, and life is about decisions. I made the decisions, and I even asked Him before I became an atheist. I even asked Him. I said, "Listen, never let me get caught, please." When I was still with my grandmother, who was a godly person, don't ever let me get caught. Well, you know what? He essentially did just that. Yeah, I'm not gonna let you get caught, but I'm gonna put you through so much. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna go through so much stuff that you're gonna turn yourself in. And I never thought about that aspect of it. So it's all about spirit, and it's all about how He deals with us. And I can say to your viewers right now, it may not take what it took for Him to get where I'm at and where you might want to be at, but He will deal with you. It's just, it depends on how receptive you are. So I think the first thing you got to do is you got to learn to be humble. You have to learn to be humble. And my big thing right now is about forgiveness. That's a big thing for me right now. Like I said, I'm not qualified to say to someone what they should be or what they shouldn't be.
Right.
Well,
there's a lot in the book, and we definitely want our audience to be able to get it. Again, the book is called Running Scared. You all can get it from Amazon.com. Make sure you do not only get the book, but also add your thoughts to it. You'll find my review and other people's reviews there on Amazon.com as well. I know that you're now getting to the social media world, so as that's updated, we'll make sure that we include that at the bottom of the screen. But Robert, so good to finally meet you, and good to be able to share your story with us, and looking forward to having you back on with us again.
Good deal.
And we thank you for watching this edition of Cyrus Webb Presents.